Michael, there's another topic that we haven't mentioned, but it's one that's as hard to talk about as money. And that, I'm going to say it out loud, it's death. And the potential for family destruction in not discussing end of life wishes and wishes for one's immediate after death dealings, as it were, what you would like your funeral service to be like, if you want one at all, whether you want cremation, whether you don't. If family members are left to guess, because no one could ever have this conversation, the possibility that everyone is completely in sync about guessing mom's wishes is very tiny. That's not going to happen. Yeah. The damage that can be done to a functioning business, because it's so hard to go back. There are many conflicts where somehow we can move on. You killed mom. That's not going to be an easy one. But mom named me. And again, this is an opportunity for mom to do the right thing and say, I have made this decision and I have named this one of my adult children or someone else. And I know families where this has happened. They name someone who is a relative who is not a blood relative because they know that's the right person to make sure what needs to happen happens. But if that's not done, the potential for discord in that family and never walking it back is so great. Cannot encourage people enough. It's not easy, but we're all going to die. And I actually have said that word that begins with a D a couple of times. Even saying it is hard in our culture.
Sure.
But that's another piece, as you know, Michael, that Dawn Gross is very tuned into how important it is for families of wealth. And I would argue at least as important for families and family businesses, regardless of the level of wealth, because the anger and the estrangement can be so profound. You need to do this.
Yeah. And it's, it goes right back into succession planning and, transition. And if we're avoiding that conversation, what do they say? The two things that we know 100% are certain is death and taxes. Well, if you know that it's certain, put it out there and say it and be okay with it. I love, my wife and I were Game of Thrones fans, and we learned to love, the dwarf Tyrion Lannister. And one of the things that he said is, I call myself a dwarf so nobody else can take it away from me. So I would, you can't punish me with that. You can't hurt me with that. So if you don't want to be afraid of death, then just look it in its face and talk about it, right?
And it's not easy. I don't want to minimize. For some families and some cultures in particular, it is really, really tough. And that may be where an outsider can help.
Yeah.
Help have that conversation and explain why it matters and that decisions need to be made. That's the other piece of it. When Susan was talking about this idea of equal and equitable and what does it all mean, I was asked to be involved once with what was ironic as a estate planning attorney who had retired, and his wife, the person who had been, the lawyer had been a mentor to the person who brought me in. These two were paralyzed in their own estate planning, knowing that it had to happen because they couldn't make a decision about this, in part because one of the adult children was estranged. And, but maybe he'll come back. Oh boy. So until then, we'll do nothing. That was a tough conversation, but we needed to have it, and we did have it, and we managed to create a plan that they could follow that would take the guilt away and also allow them to reach a decision that would then create some certainty for the other family members.
Nice.